Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm senior literary agent and author Heather Cashman.
I'm author and writing coach Stephanie Bearce.
And I'm author and writing coach Nicki Jacobsmeyer.
Our mission is to nurture and enrich established writers throughout their publishing journeys.
We welcome all genres, age groups, and publishing paths through video podcasts, online webinars, in-person retreats, and more.
We're here to help you conquer your path.
We are extremely excited today to have the talented Anna Orenstein Cardona with us. I actually met her at ALA this year, and it was a huge pleasure, and I'm very excited that we get to have her on our podcast. So thank you for coming and being with us, Anna.
Thank you for having me.
So Anna Orenstein Cardona was born and raised in Puerto Rico. She received her Bachelor's of Science degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, aka MIT, and is an alum of Faber Academy, writing a novel and writing for children. She is active in the Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators, and she is an NFEC certified financial educator and coach with over 22 years of experience working in global financial markets. In 2020, she founded Wear Your Money Crown to help close the gap in financial literacy. Currently, Anna is working on developing various projects, including more children's books. Anna divides her time between London and Puerto Rico, where she visits with family and her childhood friend. Is that Yagüe?
Hagway. Banyan tree. It's Hagway
Blanco.
Yeah.
By the San Juan Gate. And that's what your book is about, right?
Yes, my debut children's book is inspired by a true story of this banyan tree. That's the cover. I don't know if you can see it over there.
Yes.
Yeah, I literally have played under that tree, and I have a special relationship since childhood.
Yes, and if you visit her website, you will see a picture of her under the tree, which gives you goosebumps. I love it so much. So welcome, Anna.
Thank you for having me. It's such a joy to be with other creatives and professionals talking about an important topic today.
Yes.
It is. It is an important topic. Today we're going to talk about the power of creatorpreneurship.
Say that 3 times fast, right? That's awesome. Well, Anna, we're so glad you're here. Can you first share your journey as a creative with us, please?
So when I look back at my life, right, creativity has always been a central part of who I am. Since I was a kid, I always was a very inventive kid. I was always writing stories, participating in plays. In Puerto Rico, we had in high school something called English forensics, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. But basically, we would compete in different drama and oratory, which is a great way for being a public speaker later on in life. I must say that those things you learn in childhood, right? Not to be afraid to speak in front of a room of strangers really is important. And creativity is a part of that. But also I was keenly aware of the financial necessities and financial reality of my family when I was growing up. I come from a very humble background where, although both my parents were professionals, their whole career was basically pro bono work they did as lawyers, which also shows the values that they upheld. And when they had money, with 3 young children going to good schools, because my parents' value was always education, which I'm grateful of, there wasn't a lot of money and there was a lot of financial stress. And so I even used my creativity as a child to make money and put it in Mr. Blue Bear, who was my piggy bank, and save money to get certain things I wanted, whether it was selling things at school, whether it was babysitting, walking dogs. I was always trying to create that. And so that financial reality is really what I think, although I was a creative at heart, and I would have loved to follow that, let's say in my university studies, I knew that I had to do something that would create the opportunity to produce the wealth where I could give back to my family and community, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I worked
Absolutely.
Yeah, I worked hard to go to MIT, where I studied actually brain and cognitive sciences, because I was like, oh, you know what? First of all, I'm in love with neuroscience and our cognitive abilities. The field has developed massively in the last 25 years since I graduated, but I was pre-med, and I thought, great, I'm going to go to medical school. And then I realized the financial realities of a medical student, right?
Yeah.
And the student loan system in the US, as you know, can be quite onerous. And so, long story short, it was, although I even did a lot of humanities courses at MIT, MIT has excellent, excellent professors in those fields, from writing to art to everything that is in the creative arts. I knew that I had to pivot when I reached my senior year. And that's when I applied to one job on Wall Street, and I got it, thank God. And that's
Yay.
how I pivoted into finance. But that said, as Heather mentioned, I went to night school to study creative writing. I got involved with SCBWI because I knew that in my heart, creativity is an important form of self exploration and of authenticity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Absolutely.
love that you educated yourself in the craft. A lot of people will say, well, I don't have a creative writing degree, or I don't have an MFA, or things like that. And all those degrees are great if you figured out that's what you wanted to do at the time. But you can also do it in your own time and still be very successful. That discipline and drive to want to do it. So that's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So, talking about finances, that's kind of what we're going to do today. I just want to start by talking a little bit about the industry to give a backdrop for our conversations, I think would be a good idea. So, if you think about publishing financially, I'll tell you what we're seeing in all of the reports from the Big Five, especially, is they are tightening their belts to increase their own profits. And what that means is they're giving less advances to authors. They're giving lower advances. If you are writing spare, then you're getting a big advance. But if you're not writing something like that, then you're getting a smaller advance than you used to. There are less editors doing more work. The author is having to do a lot more of their own marketing and publicity. They're having to do a lot more of their own simple things like printing bookmarks, or we used to be able to retain foreign rights. We used to be able to retain film rights. Now, like even those things, the publishers are trying to keep as much of the sub rights as they possibly can so that they could get to exploit those and then give the author only a small percentage of those. And that's another thing that I've noticed lately is you see the percentages of the things that the author gets are going down. We have a lot of books that sell to a publisher that never earn out their advances because of all of these struggles that the author has to go through in order to get their books out there. So in the long run, this is creating a lot of problems, not only for authors, but also for agents. And then it has a long-term effect on the publishers. I think in the end, it's going to affect them in a negative way because they're not investing in the authors. That's my own personal, from reading every single day, all of the news from publishers.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming hearing this, right?
Absolutely. You can't win unless you know, and we want them to be our partners. But the reality is that we have to know what's going on, or we're never going to survive because we won't know how to deal with what our situation actually is.
Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, information is power. And Anna, that's why we have you here, to give us some power information. So could you give us some statistics about the financial side of being a creative and being an author in today's world?
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screens for a moment to share. I prepared some slides for today's talk because I believe that visualization is key to learning. So let's go over a bit of information that we have. And thank you, Heather, for covering the financial realities that you see as an agent and as a creative, because it backs up kind of real statistics from the Authors Guild of America and other sources, right? Basically, 21% of full-time US published authors derive 100% of their individual income from book-related income. That's leaving a massive gap of authors who do not have that ability, right? So I'm a dual citizen, I'm US and UK, and so I'm keenly aware of the situation in both continents. So here, the proportion of authors earning all the income from writing has decreased from a massive, actually 40% in 2006 to less than half by 2022. That's a big, big movement. The top 10% of authors earn almost 50% of all author income, right? And 79% of illustrators, who are very important for us, especially in the children's book creation world. Our illustrators are everything when it comes to picture books as well, to tell our story, right? And so 79% have anxiety with their careers. 69% believe they cannot live comfortably from illustration, and over 70% have experienced late payments for commissioned work, which is
that is a huge issue I see all the time, as late payments. And
Yeah.
we're not just talking about small publishers who are struggling. The other thing I'm seeing in contracts is that, we used to get our statements within 3 months. Now it's 4 months. They're pushing it out to 4 months, which means they don't have to pay you for, you already aren't getting paid. So let me just talk about this for 1 second, because I think our audience probably doesn't really understand this if you haven't published. But let's say your book published in January. Then from January to June, you are going to have sales. So then you won't get your royalty statement until 4 months after that. And that's when they pay you for those sales. So they're earning all that money all that time. And then they don't have to pay you for 4 months. And there's a reason it happens and stuff like that. It's like returns come in and all of that. And it's complicated. But still, as an author, you're waiting a really long time for your royalties, if you're even earning royalties. So I can understand why this all gives people anxiety. And I am astounded, honestly, that 10% of authors earn almost half of all the income in the whole industry.
Yeah.
That is astounding.
We have to get updated figures. This was from 2022, so I need to see if I can get 2023 stats. But it is, I'm sure it hasn't shifted, frankly.
Right. Or not in the way we hope.
No. Hasn't improved for writers.
Exactly. So if we continue towards the financial reality, Heather talked about advances. And so I always describe them as a monetary commitment, right, from a publisher in exchange for our creative work. But the tricky part, just as you very well explained, Heather, is the payment schedule. But in addition to that, when you think about that, it's even, let's just talk about advances, forget royalties. Like royalties are if you're lucky enough to earn out, right, your advance. Right. They're looking at advances. Some publishers have put it into up to 5 payments, right? Most, what I've seen is 3, but can you imagine your advance is then moved into a timeline that is completely out of your control? Because if your editor at the publisher is late on their commitment to give you their editing notes, etc., you're still waiting as a creative, right? And so there is that process of, there is a payment schedule that you need to negotiate. Then of course you have agent fees. I personally believe that that is an investment, because if you can have an agent on your corner, that is amazing. My first book deal, I negotiated on my own. The Society of Author helped me a lot with the legal side of things, and also my creative writer published friends helped me to understand what was a financial reality. But I come from a world where I negotiated every day for 23 years on a trading floor. So I'm okay with negotiating, right? And thankfully, I've had a tremendously friendly and fabulous publisher, Beaming Books, who was super open, but I did the work as a creative. I went to them with a business proposal of why I should get paid more. So, so again, but agent fees at the end of the day, sometimes creatives forget, that I have to take that out of my advance, right? And then some of my writing clients don't estimate the cost of taxes into the equation of how much is their take home at the end of the day. Right. And so we're talking about something, as I say, like the payment schedule part is probably out of our control. Of course, our agent helps us, but I'm sure you all have had either experiences or stories where, for instance, an editor may leave even the publishing house, and then you're left as like, who's going to pick up, and things like that. So it is important and something to consider. And then if we move forward to give you some more information about numbers. So in 2020, a young adult author, Toshi Onyebushi, highlighted the industry disparities around what publishers paid authors, right? And so there was a big hashtag that came up called Publishing Paid Me that was started by another young adult author called Elle McKinney. And so it was really about, it first started with hopes of bringing information about the inequality of pay between Black and non-Black writers, but a lot of people participated in this survey. And so I'm going to share with you some data from that survey that came from authors specifically. Of course, I don't have a way to authenticate, right? Because I'm not reading their contract and making sure, but I do believe that a lot of this matches with what I've heard. And so this graph I'm sharing is from Carol Kim, who's also a children's author, and she did an analysis of Publishing Paid Me. And I reached out to Carol last year when I did this presentation for SCBWI in their summer global conference, because I wanted to double check how she calculated the mean and median in order to understand things better. So if we look at mean, that is the average of a set of numbers of the input from the authors, and the median is the middle number. But what do we see from here? Basically, that the purple, which is picture books, right? They are, let's say, receiving the less advance. And by the way, a lot of authors came back saying they receive between $1,000 to $5,000 in advances. And actually, I'd love to know, Heather, what you see as an agent in that space. But what struck me of this is various things. Just because we write for children does not mean that we should be undervalued as a creative, right? So if you see the advances between adult books and YA, MG, and PB, there is quite a contrast there. But what I want to say again, these are just advances. And as we just described, you have to take away taxes, you have to take away agent fees. You also have to understand that you might not get this money in the same year. And so there is a delay and gap in between you getting your money. I just wanted to share these because I think it brings to the forefront that it is difficult to survive. Like if you sell 1 or 2 picture books as an author a year, right? That is amazing work. But still survive on these kind of figures, especially if you are one of the authors that received 1 to 5K.
So can we I just want to state these numbers because we do have people that only listen.
Brilliant.
So for picture books, the average advance is $11,885. So this is average. So you have some picture books that get a $250,000 advance, but the majority of picture books get, right, like $1,000 to $5,000 advance.
Yeah.
Then we have for middle grade, the average is $31,749. And for YA, it's $47,169. I wish we had an adult figure. I mean, I know you don't, and that's okay. I think the adult figure would be a bit higher than the YA, though, because from what I've seen, I think that there are a few really big authors who earn big advances because the publishers know they'll earn out. I mean, they can calculate those pretty precisely. That is where the lion's share of this money is going.
Well, and off to the side here, it's little, but it says adult advances average around $66,000. That's 6 times the amount of a picture book. And if you've ever written a picture book, you will know it is not an easy task, although there might be less words. It's just
Nicki,
fascinating to me that the market that is, I don't want to say instruct, but the market that is showing the world and for them to explore their truths while they are learning and growing and developing is undervalued when they're the future versus adults that are, not that we can't change, but we're pretty set in our ways, right? And not as open-minded. And that kind of just gives a perspective of the pulse of things, of what we find is more valuable monetarily. So just fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I think picture books are empowering the youth of the future.
So I have a question for you, Heather, as an agent, just wondering, because when we think of a picture book in the US, right, let's say the average cost might be between $15 to $18, right, for a hardback picture book that I've seen. In the UK, those prices drop dramatically, and also they're more paperback than hardback here, interestingly enough. So they sell for less. So this is kind of a funny story. As a bit of a monopoly, it's cheaper for me to buy my children's books in the UK as an author because I get them at a lot more discount than I do via the US. But I'm going to give you guys a tip about what I do on that, which is part of my earnings diversity strategy.
I find that so interesting that it's cheaper in the UK, because when I lived in Australia for a period of time, and the books there were so much more expensive.
Australia actually has book regulations that protect creatives.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so expensive.
On discounting and everything. Yeah. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So let's say you have the price differences between hardback, paperback, and then you see an adult book, and at least most fiction non-books that I buy, fiction books that I buy for adults, so maybe romance, I love romance and things like that, I may pay $8, $12. So what's interesting to me is I think the cost of producing a children's book, obviously, with the color and the illustrations and everything is higher. I get it.
Yeah.
But you have caretakers, parents, teachers, educators, library, like so many people who would be looking into children's book, because as has been wisely said here, it is the cornerstone of children's development. A lot of it is the world they get involved in and read. And that's why diversity is so important. So a child can see themselves reflected in that page. So I just wanted to share that it astonishes me that sometimes the price difference is in the favor of children's books. So is the demand of actual people buying paperbacks instead of listening to audiobooks and Kindles and stuff like that. And yet we are underpaid by multiples.
Yeah. One thing I do have to say is one of the reasons I think the advance is skewed a little bit is because the publisher has to pay the advance to the author, and then often they also have to pay an advance to a different illustrator because the author is an author only, not an author illustrator.
True.
And so I think that does kind of skew those numbers as well, because in order to produce the same one book, you have to pay two people, and paying an illustrator is more expensive than paying an author. And I know this because I see my own authors and my own author illustrators and what they go through, and it is very different.
Yeah. That's really good to know, actually. You're right. It is that equation of author illustrator as well. But I still think there's a dichotomy, and that sometimes the children's world isn't as valued, even though I believe
absolutely
it is harder sometimes to write a children's book, right, than an adult book, because it depends on your style of writing. Like, I just like to write. An editor has to for children's book cut that up. But okay. So there we have it. So that's about the, let's say, the financial realities. And I think it's very important to speak about this because it's just not talked about too much.
I think that there is a lot of shame that comes from feeling like you are not valued and that you are not earning out, and so you don't want to talk about it. And I think that if everybody would just talk about it more, we would all see that we're all just actually doing really well. The system is just broken.
Absolutely. I agree. When I first, as I said, I always love my creativity, and I got involved in the industry to learn how the industry works through SEBWI, through taking courses, meeting my community of fellow creatives. But the business side, I didn't see till I became an author myself, right? A published author.
Yeah.
And that deal came through my participation in Latinx Pitch in 2020, where my wonderful editor, Naomi Kruger, found me. And, she let me do an R&R, revise and resubmit. And so again, from there, I negotiated my contract and I moved forward with them. But the business reality struck me. And in a way, my heart broke because I saw, oh my God, how can people make a living in this industry? Because it's not only about the number of advances, but it's how the payouts happened, as I was sharing with you. But it's also the fact that in those days as well, the shipping costs for, because of COVID, the supply and demand, there were so many unexpected other pressures, right, that happened. Friends that had their debuts and their books coming out that year, they couldn't do in-person events, which really hurt you as an author starting your career, let's say. So there was a lot going on, but the financial reality, and this is with my business hat on, as someone who actually analyzes and invests in companies, right, as someone who helped in my past career, just to explain what I did is I worked with asset managers and pension funds on their investments. So the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the big guys that manage our pensions and our retirement accounts, I worked with them on their investments. So my background is actually very deep in financial knowledge of investing. And so all of a sudden I come into an industry where I'm like, this is broken. Like I would go in there and I would just move around pieces, almost like a company has shareholders. I believe that writers and creatives are shareholders of a publishing company, even though we may not own the stock. When you invest in your people, your ROI gets better. And there's so many studies I can quote about this. And part of that is ensuring the financial wellness of your shareholders or employees, let's say, right? And so, yeah, I was shocked. And there was a question I actually was keen on asking you as an agent, Heather, as well, is when you go to negotiate deals, are you ever asked if an author has earned out previous book deals if they have not been the publisher?
Absolutely.
Huh, interesting.
And it does stop them from getting a deal.
Wow.
And so, I mean, you have to disclose that. That feels like such, I don't know, like that feels like an invasion of
I don't
privacy.
even have to disclose it. They can find that information.
Find out. Yeah.
They can find that information, and they do. And I have had editors come back to me like so depressed because they absolutely loved a book and took it to acquisitions, begged for it, and sales and marketing were like, no, they didn't earn out before. And they come back to me and say, the sales for this author aren't good enough, and so we can't offer on it.
So I have a question. So does that mean then that it doesn't matter what, they don't ask what the advance was? Because as an author, then wouldn't you strategically want to be like, will you negotiate a lower advance so I can earn out and get my royalties? So
I have absolutely
not more successful. I mean, you are successful, right? You're a published author, but like yes, you're getting the money up front, but you're technically not, right? There's all these payments. It's going to take time to earn that money anyways. So, so that is something you can do.
My authors who have had lower advances from mid-sized publishers and earned out are doing much better. They are thriving compared to authors who get these massive advances and can't earn them out because of, I will just say it, specific things that the publishing industry has done to them. Specific things that have happened to them because of things their editor did, or because their editor left, or because there were strikes, or because things fell through the cracks, or because someone didn't order the arcs at the right time and their date got pushed. There are so many reasons that they can negatively affect your career as an author, and then you don't earn out your advance, and they literally can destroy your career. And I know that is so, I may cut that out because it's so depressing, but
I think that is very valuable, I think, as a creative. Depending if you have a new relationship with your agent or whatever the case, you've been with your agent forever, and like a different perspective, like when they're like, okay, they're going to offer you this advance and that number looks so amazing and you know exactly what you're going to do with every penny, but to be like, well, wait a minute, like that knowledge is huge, because I think the assumption is the bigger advance, the better.
This is the thing though. It's a double-edged sword. If a publishing company gives you a huge advance, the likelihood is that they're going to invest in you even more to earn out, so that you will earn out that advance.
Marketing.
So it is a double-edged sword. A lot of what I'm talking about that happened during COVID. It happened when, you know, there were a lot of things, like a lot of people were struggling in certain ways because of COVID. Things slowed down incredibly. Like she said, the sales and marketing, it was very difficult. So there's a lot of these things that are uncontrollables. It's just, it is a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
If you get that higher advance, then the chances of them making you a lead title and giving you all the PR and all of those things, they're going to really try and earn it out.
Yeah. And
it's
I think
very difficult to know what to do.
You know, why only 10%, so 10% of fathers make up 50% of the advances, right?
Yeah.
Because of exactly that. If they are going to invest, and I see this all the time with celebrity authors, right? All of a sudden you see them get these deals that are just extraordinary. And funnily enough, there's some big names in the UK I've seen in the press where their book has not done well, yet they threw all the budget of marketing and publicity on that author, making medium size or other authors suffer a lot, sadly, and having to use part of their advances to invest in themselves, which is part of what I will be talking about shortly, because I want to introduce a concept to your listeners about what can we do in an industry where so much is out of our hands, right?
Anna, let's talk about
that.
Let's talk about that. We need some uplifting. What can we do, Anna?
Please.
So, I am going to share my screen here to talk about the concept of creatorpreneurship. So obviously the name in itself is a combination of being a creator, which we all are, and being an entrepreneur. And so what I mean by being a creatorpreneur is embracing our inner entrepreneur as a creative and skillfully harmonizing our artistic passions with the business realities of our industry, right? And so, again, what I mean by that, and I will be discussing a lot more in detail, is that by doing so, we're basically thinking, okay, I am a creative, but how can I leverage my superpowers as a creative, knowing the business realities of the world? What can I do and why is this important? And so there's really 3 benefits of embracing creatorpreneurship. And I actually found this quote by Andy Warhol that I love. And he says, being good in business is the most fascinating kind of art. Isn't that brilliant that an artist sees that? And so firstly, when we embrace creatorpreneurship, we unlock the full potential. So what do I mean by that? It's actually, as an author, and this also goes for illustrators, right? As a creative, I'm going to say, we have to see ourselves as a brand. What do we stand for? When people see our name, what do they think of, right? What is our brand voice? What are the skills that I have in order to maximize my artistic impact with commercial success? Seeing yourself as a brand and knowing what you stand for is vital. Being a creatorpreneur is about sustainable success, because also, like Heather also explained to us about how it works, that some people may get these huge deals and all of a sudden that might be the end of their career if they don't earn out, right? Potentially, if they're not able to get other deals. So we need to be sustainable. And so we create that by setting goals, by managing things such as contracts. For instance, having a good agent, let's say like Heather, negotiating for you to keep certain rights that might have more financial benefit for you in the future. That is key, right? Leveraging digital platforms for your own marketing. We are so lucky as artists and creators today. We have different social medias. We can build an email list, and we can do a lot of this in a way that is not super expensive, right? You even have free email providers like ConvertKit and MailChimp and some others that up to a certain amount, right? It allows you to do certain things where you can have a direct connection with your readers, with librarians, with teachers, with everyone, right? So that's part of marketing, and I'm happy to dive more into that, but it's also looking after your financial well-being. And part of what I do as a financial educator, and I work with a lot of creatives, is I see them as a whole. I'm like, are you protected today if you had no income coming in for 1 year because you have a health issue, right? I look at that by combining where they are in their financial well-being, how we can improve that. Do they have the right insurances? Are they protected if there's a lawsuit? Things like that, right? And diversifying revenue streams. And in a few slides, I'm going to share my diverse streams and also some other creator friends. And by creating and embracing entrepreneurship and creativity together, we broaden our horizons, because how I see this, and this is with a business hat on, is there's a lot of stakeholders when you're an author, right? You have your agent, let's say you have your publisher, you have the readers, the librarians, the schools, you have so many different stakeholders. So how are you going to leverage your connections, your network, and your opportunities through these relationships in order to have more financial well-being? So this is in a nutshell what I mean about that.
Right now, if you're like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. What does all this mean? There's ways you can educate, you can, hire someone like Anna and work with her as a partnership and broaden your horizons. Those things happen when you make connections, when you go to retreats, when you go to conferences. Retreats are great when there's going to be acquiring faculty and professional faculty there, because you're in an intimate setting. And you're going to build a relationship, and people, those are things that are an investment of what you're doing and making those connections. And yeah, Anna, if you can give us some examples too.
Like meeting Anna ALA is a great example.
Yes.
True.
And now we're all benefiting from it. That's what keeps everyone going and motivated and makes a difference as a creative, and keeping that why in your forefront. Why am I doing this? And what difference is it making?
So Anna, all of this seems like what you're saying to me and to all of us is that having entrepreneurship is far more than just being an author. And it's about our overall financial health and how this creative work fits into that. So what specific suggestions do you have for us to help us make it as a full-time career instead of a side job or a side gig?
So just to answer that before I share the next slide to show my diversified revenue streams and then of other creatives, just to give context, is one of the things that's really important is I am asked sometimes, like, when should an author consider switching to being full-time? And I'm going to give some hard love, tough love, do they say? But this is the truth. An author or creative should not make that shift unless the writing income consistently covers their living expenses, including health insurance, especially in the US, and they have 6 to 12 months of a financial cushion saved on top of that. And I have to be honest, because there's a great book, by the way, as well, that I need to Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to talk
about my favorite. We're just getting ready to talk about that. I love the candid honesty that she brings in that book.
So there's literally, I like to put little Post-its here. I'm just going to tell you something. I learned a lot. I did not know that Eat, Pray, Love was her 5th book, by the way. And she was already like a New York Times bestseller. She said, even after I got published, I didn't quit my day job just to be on the safe side. In fact, I didn't quit my day job, or my day jobs, I should say, until I had already written 3 books. And those 3 books were all published by major houses and were reviewed nicely in the New York Times. Sorry, I said 5. So that Eat, Pray, Love was her 4th book. And then on top of that, she says, there's no dishonor in having a job. What is dishonorable is carrying away your creativity by demanding that it pay for your entire existence.
Oh, I love that.
I do too.
I love it.
And that is the reality. Now, again, there are people in different situations. You may have a household where you have a spouse that brings in a good income and it allows you to work more on your creativity. But I am thinking of someone who is like, Anna, I had a great book deal. I don't have enough time to write because I'm working and I want to shift to this completely. I'm like, cool, let's make it work, but let's make a plan before you do that, right? Let's make sure, especially given the particularities and the volatility that we see in the publishing world, that you are protected, because the worst that can happen is financial stress, which then turns into physical health issues. I've seen that so much with so many creatives, and it's super, super important. So I'm going to share the next slide to talk about my diverse income sources and future goals. Okay. So firstly, as I explained, even though creativity was always important to me, I knew I had to make money to buy my parents their first home, right? That was something I'm very proud of having been able to do at a young age, because I purposefully, that was my why. It was like, I want to put a roof over their heads, right? And I'm very blessed that I was able to do that. Now, On top of that, because I didn't have a stable, let's say, physical home as a child, that became something very valued to me. And so I started to invest in property as a young age. So now I'm lucky enough to have rental income. I know that if you start later in life, especially now with mortgage rates, et cetera, it might be more difficult, but this is what I want to invite people to think. Rental income doesn't mean you have to own a whole new property. It could be renting out a room. In the UK, there's a lot of people that in their property, they build these amazing sheds that then they Airbnb, right? And I've seen that actually in other cities in the US, like California. So I want you to be creative about rental income. And in fact, one of my clients who lives in the East Coast, she said to me, Anna, after your course, I decided to rent out my garage because my neighbor has 2 cars that they were looking to park to protect it from the weather. I have space, and she rented out her garage for an extra,
amazing.
$150 a month. So think out of the box, right? Be creative on how you can rental income, right? Savings account. As creatives, sometimes we put our financial health on the back burner and we're not actively seeking, is my money working hard for me? So part of my diversity income, right, is making sure that the money that I have in savings account is getting the best interest rate possible. So I want you all that are listening to think about, okay, what do I have in savings and what is it earning? And if it's not earning enough, and a great website, by the way, is bankrate.com. Go onto there, click the button that says high yield savings accounts and have a look to see what interest rate. Because if you're not getting at least 4 to 4.5% now, your money's not working for you. Okay. And that's on liquid savings account. Another source of income would be my investment income. The third diverse income source is investment income. And what do I mean by that? That is investments that I have made either in my medium-term savings bucket or long-term savings bucket. Let me explain. Long-term savings bucket would be retirement accounts, things like a 401k, 403b. If you are like us, a creative that doesn't have a company to give you a retirement account, we can do simple things like Roth IRAs or traditional IRAs or even solo 401k. I think we need to dedicate a different episode to talk more about these vehicles, but just the little,
I think so. Yeah.
The little nutshell I want you to think about is how am I saving for my future self? Forget the word retirement. Because if you love what you're doing, you're never going to retire. So just think about your future self. And then your medium-term investment income, the things that I make are things that maybe I don't need the money for 5 years. So I put that into certificate of deposits. Potentially, I put that into high yield savings accounts. I can think of different investments, but that's a source of income that I have. I try to save some of my rental income to put into investment income every month, because the way to build wealth is taking surplus money and investing it into assets that pay you back. And bonds and stocks pay you back in different forms. And that's the goal. Rule Your Finances Academy is my online group coaching program, which is a 12-week program that I launch once or twice a year. And it's all about the 6 main pillars of building wealth for individuals. It's for US and UK individuals or dual citizens. And that brings me a revenue source at certain times of the year. And I have payment plans. And sometimes I forget. And all of a sudden I see, oh, there's some money in the bank. Where'd that come from? I was like, yay, it's a payment plan from someone. Where Your Money Crown is my financial education and coaching business. And how I make money there is either working individually with people on their money journey. I do that via coaching, money mentor sessions. And I recently, as of 2 years ago, started to work with local schools, writing their financial curriculum and doing financial wellness days. Yes, I'm working right now with a great school in South London called Whitgift. And it's an all-boys school. And I'm working with their year 6, 7, and 8 students. And it's something that I want to replicate in other schools as well. So that it's ways of thinking, what are my skill sets? And how can I not only have positive impact, because I'm a very values-driven person. I am a believer, and my money motto is the more I have, the more I give. How can I have more so I can give more? To charity, to my causes, to help people that may not be able to afford my services one day. I want to do more free things. Book, I put advance because I've only had one book so far, but I put S because I'm hoping more will come, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank Thank you. School visits and author festivals. So school visits, it's super important. As an author, we can have so much leverage in doing school visits. And something I just want to mention is some schools may not have the economic means to pay you, but it doesn't mean you can't get an ROI, a return on investment of your time. You can get marketing through them. You can have the school send, which I always do, send letters saying to the parents, here's how you can purchase Anna's book. I actually do negotiate fees to go to schools and talk. But if it's, for example, a Title I school or a school that I know cannot, I will work out a deal where I will get marketing and get my voice known within that community. Author festivals, I had one last year and I have one coming in October where I'm getting a speaking fee to present. And then book sales I personally make. And this is what I wanted to invite creatives to think about, especially authors. So when you get a publishing deal, many times you can buy copies at around a 50% discount, right? Do you guys have that as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Usually.
Okay.
That's
so,
actually something that I negotiate during contracts.
Okay. Brilliant. So in my case, I have that. And so how can you make money of that? Number one, you can buy the books at 50% and then sell them at face value or even a little bit of a discount as an incentive and make a good ROI on the money you make. Now, personally, what I do is I have set up a company that buys the book almost like a distributor, right? And so what happens with that is my discount is not as big as an author discount, but it's like 45%. And the good thing about that is that it's like a business. So I can deduct expenses involved with that process, which is maybe marketing and certain things, and make profit through that. So what I want to, and it counts for book sales, right, Heather?
Yeah,
Because
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
If you buy your own books at the 50% discount, it doesn't count toward book sales, but if you do it through a distributor, it will. The other thing I just want to note really quickly is that there are definitely publishers, mostly the big five, but also some medium-sized publishers that do not allow you to sell your own books. So make sure in your contract that you can do that.
Yeah, that's super important. And maybe that's something also to think about. Like you just said, you negotiate that in contracts that authors should be able to, because for instance, at one school, there was like 200 copies. Well, you know what? That makes a big difference. I wanted to count for book sales and I wanted to count for making money as well. So there's different things, but what I want to invite people to think about is how can I be creative like an entrepreneur and make money through my skills and through my current resources? And so my future goals is actually, I want to have more online digital products because right now, everything I do, I'm involved in. I teach in person or live or online. And I'll be honest, I suffered from exhaustion last year. I burned myself out. And also my husband had very big health issues in December. And I had to just take off time from my business and close it down for almost 2 months to focus on his healing journey. And so my point is, gosh, I need to produce more online digital products where someone can just buy it at a more economic price than having me one-to-one, but still they have value. It's a value exchange, right? Book royalties, almost there. And then I put here author and or small business grants. That's a future goal. I'd love to find, especially for instance, and this is with my business hat on, I am a minority owned woman business. And so there's grants and certain things that you can find. So think about as a creative as well, what grants are there for you? Where can you get certain resources? So that's an example of me. Now I want to share some examples from other book writing, creative book children writers. And by the way, I just want to share the reality is that I don't earn close to what I used to earn when I had the big fancy job on the trading floor, right? And I am okay with that because when I left, I prepared myself with a financial plan, but also the reality is I made sure certain things were paid off because I knew of the volatility of having your own business. I did not want a business where I had to find outside investors. I wanted to fund myself so I have 100% ownership. And why? Because I want to run a business that is authentic to me, to my values and goals. And so it took me, as I said, 23 years before I left my day job to become a financial educator and focus on my writing. So I just wanted to share that this is a journey and a season in life. If you're not there, do not stress. Just one little stepping stone forward of saying, hey, what is it that I could do? Little things, like even for instance, if you are a creative, it's like, hey, what workshop could I host online or at my local school? How can I pitch myself? How can I use my talents and skills to not only add value to others, but also to add to my income, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to share this slide, which is Valerie Bowling. And she's an educator and children's author who, in addition to doing school visits, organizes author and poet in residence programs. Isn't that cool? So she uses her skills and experience as a former educator to specifically create residence programs with schools that last between 1 to 2 weeks. She does teaching, writing lessons, literacy initiative, and events outside the school day, workshops, and much more. So if you visit her website, it's valeriebowling.com. You'll see what she offers. So that's using her skills to say, hey, how can I create, again, impact and also income in what I do? The second person I want to share is actually a personal friend of mine, Marissa Valdez. We met through SCBWI in the UK, and she's a children's book author and illustrator. And her debut book, Ambitious Girl, released at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And she is a course creator. So she worked with a company called Domestica and created a course called Online Portfolio for Children's Book Illustrators that walks students through the process of creating vibrant online portfolio to kickstart their career as an illustrator. And she's had more than 6,400 students enrolled. So
that's fantastic.
It's brilliant, right? And so she's a Latina as well. So shout out to my Latina girl, but it's wonderful to see someone create this. And the beautiful thing is like hers is fully digitalized. It's like there and people can download it and buy it. And that is passive income that comes to her. And her website, for those listening who want to look into Marissa's amazing work, is Marissa Valdez, VALDEZ.com. And the third creator is also a Las Musas sister that I want to share with you, Laken Zea Camp. And she is a children's author who writes from picture book to YA. And in 2022, she was a recipient of the Pura Bill Honor. And she describes herself as having 3 main objectives when it comes to storytelling: make people laugh, cry, and crave Mexican food. So in addition to her writing, she diversifies her income through another course. And this is different. This is using her skill set. It's called Debut Author Bootcamp. And it's an 8-week self-paced and live course designed to teach children creators everything they need to know and thrive in their debut career. So it's very specific. It's very niche, isn't it? It's for debut authors. And additionally, she coaches authors who want to offer school visits. Right? She helps to brainstorm what the session could look like, come up with exercises and everything. And Laken's website is LAEKAN, camp.com. Maybe you can see it if you go into the Wayward YouTube channel and see the slides that we're sharing, just listening in. But what I wanted to say is everyone here is a creative, but they're like, how can I use what I know in a way to become an entrepreneur? Right. And that's the creatorpreneur aspect, right? And I could tell you so many other people that I know that are creatives. My good friend Camilla here in the UK, also, she does dog walking and she does other amazing activities with schools. So I want you to really think about, especially on that passive income stream of, you put in some work at the beginning, right? You're going to need some active income, meaning investment, to put into, let's say, a course. You may have to pay for the platform, maybe editing videos, etc. But once that's up and running, you're building the passive income. So again, you can refer back to your creative side and make time for that. So that's something that I wanted to share. So to open the possibility of brainstorming, how can I do more with what I have?
That's awesome. I love all the ideas, and I really appreciate you also telling us to take it one step at a time, because I do think that's something that can be overwhelming when we look at it. But 23 years to set yourself up, that gives us some perspective too. So thank you. It's very helpful.
You're welcome. Again, everyone has something to give. I always believe, whether it is time, it is talent, it is creativity. And I just invite you to ensure, as a creative, where am I now? And am I doing everything possible to build my brand? What do I want to be known for? What relationships? Like, I love that you all mentioned about going and networking at conferences. And it doesn't even need to be a conference that involves, let's say, a fee and travel and things. It could be, hey, let me get together with authors and other writers in my community. Let me volunteer at organizations. For example, you can volunteer for SCBWI and be invited for free to conferences and to other events where you get to, right, to meet editors, to meet agents, to meet other creatives, and together work out what is my voice going to be and why. For instance, I think it's so important nowadays. How are you putting that branding out there? What resources? And it's something I'm working on, because one of the situations I have is I'm a financial educator and I am also an author. And it's like, how do I combine those worlds together in a marketing perspective? And so how I share that, at least what I'm trying to portray in my social media, is I am a financial educator who is a creative, right? And my creative expression is writing, but it's also a way for me to earn income within that umbrella of who I am. And so that's why I didn't separate two Instagrams and I didn't separate two Twitters, and I just keep it all in one house because I see myself as one and all. And so I'm not the best. There's a lot of tweaking I need to do to be better at that messaging. But if we don't try, how can we know what to fix? I believe as a creator, we are here to add value in this life. And hopefully, right, I know for children's books, especially, you are here to have that one little, even if it's one little life that you change, right, to improve, to let them see themselves in the stories and to have a positive impact in the child. That's why we're here. But because that is our mission doesn't mean that we don't deserve to know our worth and to ask for our worth. Because when you are financially stable, you have the ability to create time and space for your creativity to have more impact.
Yeah, I really think that the publishing industry relies too much on unpaid labor. We kind of talked about that before, and it leads us to undervalue our own time and contributions. So Anna, how can we overcome the guilt associated with charging for our work and recognize the true value of what we offer?
So that's a great question, Heather. So the first thing I want to put into mind is selling is of service. When we create something that we sell, we are creating a service to either educate or change the mind of our reader in a positive way. When we value ourselves to charge, we are being valued by the person that pays us, because also people that pay attention. So there's something very simple is if you organize a workshop that is for free and 100 people sign up, if you get 10 to 20 people show up live, that's amazing. But if you charge, even if it's just $20, you will probably have at least 60% show up rate, right? And higher if you say it's not recorded, if it's an online, but if it's in person. And I see that in everything I do. And so when you just think about when you are saying my work is worth this, you are actually asking someone to see not only the worth of you, but the worth of the possibility of what may come. And so you need to be very clear about that, is my first piece of advice. Again, as also I read from Elizabeth Gilbert, the shame is asking your creativity to pay for your whole existence, right? It's not about, hey, I have to work as well, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. Now, of course, there's a thinking like a creatorpreneur is saying, okay, what do I already know? What do I need to learn? And what steps and actions do I need to get to my ultimate result? And so that is today the mindset I'm inviting people to step back a moment and say, okay, am I stepping into my authenticity as a creator? Am I there financially? And if not, let me think about how I can build my own brand, use my connections more wisely, negotiate better. Even things like, for instance, if you are a listener who has an agent, when was the last time you actually met with them to establish a stronger relationship so that you are also top of mind for them? When did you reach out to your editor, even if they were your old editor from a previous book, and just, hey, I'm thinking about you. How are you? It's about reconnecting with people, right? And they might think of you for another project or be like, hey, what are you working on? Right? What are you working on now? And so I want you to think about all that. I want you to think, for instance, as well as I already mentioned, if you are organizing school visits, that they should, let me just say this, it should have financial compensation. And if it doesn't, think about what is the non-financial compensation you can get. Again, marketing, newsletters, emails to parents, showcasing your work, book sales, so offer book signings, hand out bookmarks that have a QR code, then that lead people easily to buy your book online. Mm-hmm. These are all things I want you to be aware of and to do, to not be ashamed for asking, because when you have money, you can actually have impact in alignment with your values. If you are someone like me, I'm an animal rescuer and I love the work I do in that field, but I'll tell you, it is really expensive. Vet bills can be extraordinarily expensive. So right. So I know the more I have, the more I can put into rescuing more animals and finding them forever homes. And so I want you all to think about that. And just an important note about, let's say, knowing your worth and everything is to think about, especially, and this is something as I shared with my husband's health and some issues of my own health recently, is that health is wealth. And so what are you doing as a creative to protect your health, which is going to have an impact on your wealth, I think is important to state.
Yeah.
All wise words.
Anna, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. There's so much to it, and it's about taking one stone overturning and looking one step at a time. But one of the things that I'm quite passionate about is helping to take that Wall Street lingo away from it to make it more easily understandable for the way you and I talk. So for instance, instead of investment vehicles, I say, when you go to the grocery store and you put your items in something, whether it is a trolley, whether it is a basket, whether you hold it in your hands, there's ways to explain concepts, right, in easier ways. So what's your basket going to be? And then I explain what those baskets can be, right, in the finance terms. So there's ways to explain it, because one thing I hate, and I see this so much, people in the finance industry make it harder on purpose so that you just give them your money so they manage it and charge you a lot in fees, which you do not have to be paying.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think we need to have you come back, because I'd love to explore some more of these ideas with you. So
great. Well,
thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Wayward Writers.
Let's connect. Find us at waywardwriters.com, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
See you next time. Conquer your path.